But usually, 99 times out of 100, they're not ready. They like it when they knock on your door, catch you off guard. But when you run to them and catch them off guard, you turn the tables on. And that's all of God. That's as it should be. All right, let's continue. Verse 51. Verse 51, I want you to consider this truth. Many unsaved people only parrot what they've heard other people say. And the reason I say that from this point is, let's read verse 51. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. You know, people like to shoot their mouth off when somebody else is going to go out and do all the fighting for them. They're real brave. You know, I'll be right behind you. I'll be right behind you. But when their hero, their champion, was defeated, they were humiliated and fled, and the armies of Israel pursued. And that's how it is a lot of times. You watch these public debates, and I've been watching a bunch of debates recently on the subject of atheism. There are some very outspoken atheists who have become more aggressive. And this has caused a lot of Christians to be on the defensive. How do you answer that? Because it's not popular to be an atheist. And of all the different categories of people that have been surveyed, who would you vote for president? Would you vote for a black? Would you vote for a Catholic, a woman? The lowest percentage that gets any votes is someone who is an atheist. They would get fewer votes for president of all the other categories, social categories that they ask them about. It's not very popular to be an atheist. Only about 2 to 3% of the entire country, a recent poll, claim that they are atheists. But atheism recently has been getting a lot of publicity. These fellows have been writing books that have been sort of aggressive, daring us to answer their challenges. And there have been 3 or 4 or 5 popular books by atheists written in the last few years. And Christians, of course, had to regroup and answer their charges, answer their questions, and evaluate their books. And a lot of people like to hide behind, stand behind some person. They think he makes a good argument for me, and he can defend my position much better. But if that position gets debunked and defeated, well, then the people standing behind them, they have no hero. They have nobody to rally around anymore. And so sometimes it's very good to cut the head off the serpent, or to slay the beast. And that's as it should be as well. But a lot of unsaved people only repeat and parrot what they've heard other people say. I was asking a guy the other day. He's been a Roman Catholic all of his life. He's about 86 years old. Wow. And I said, you've been a Catholic all your life, right? He said, yeah. I said, well, let me ask you. When someone dies, we believe that they've passed from this life into the next life. And so they are farther along than we have been. We haven't got that far yet. They are farther ahead of us in the world beyond. Now, when I go to my job, I don't have the authority to tell my boss he gets a raise or to promote my boss, because I'm the underling. He is higher up the corporate food chain than I am. But I can't give him a raise, but he could give me a raise. He's in a position to help me, but I'm not in a position to help him. It only goes one direction. And likewise, when someone dies, they have passed from this life into the next life. How is it then that a bunch of men in the College of Cardinals decide that somebody who has already progressed and advanced beyond them should be elevated to a saint or not? What authority do they have?
Yeah.
Now, that saint, let's just, for argument's sake, let's suppose they have the ability to help me in this life. They might be able to do something for me, but what can I do for them? I don't have the authority to elevate them to sainthood. So where does the church get that authority?
Yeah.
He's now 86 years old, goes to church almost every day, had no idea. Mm-hmm. He had no, in fact, question would never even come to his mind.
That's good.
For the last 86 years, he'd just been believing it, because he was taught to believe it, and never had examined his own doctrine, his own church doctrine. All right, the next thing I want you to consider is found in verse 52. the soul winner becomes an encouragement to the brethren. When they saw David had slain Goliath, all the rest of the soldiers, Israelites, got up from their hiding in the trench and began to pursue the armies of the Philistines. Of course, the Philistines were in a very quick retreat when they saw that Goliath was defeated. They began to run, and the Israelites, that's all it took for the Israelites to suddenly muster courage to start going after the Philistines. You know, a whole group of Israelites could have ganged up on Goliath, but that apparently never occurred to them. But once he was gone, suddenly they found the courage that they had lacked up to this time, and they began to go out and chase after the Philistines. But your faithfulness to tell others about Christ, even if you don't think it is an encouragement to the brethren.
Amen.
When I hear some of our young people talk about their experiences on the doorstep or street preaching, it's a great pump in the arm. It's a great encouragement. I get a thrill vicariously by hearing what God's doing in the lives of our young ladies and our young men. And verses 53 and 54, let me read those verses here. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. The would-be soul winners, that is, those ones who only went out to fight after the main battle was over, it doesn't say they slew any of the Philistines. They chased after them, wounded them, came back and raided their tents and took their things. But you know what? They didn't really make a full end of the Philistines. Right after that, Goliath was defeated, and the Israelites pursued after the Philistines, and they came back to their camp, and the day had ended. Only one Philistine was dead. There's still only one Philistine dead. They spoiled their tents and took some of their possessions and chased them, and it says they came back from chasing the Philistines. They didn't defeat any of them. They should have wiped them all out. You know what that means? That means the enemies of the gospel are going to be back.
Yes, sir.
Just when you think you've laid something to rest, you know, just when you think one TV evangelist and fraud, phony fake faith healer has been debunked and humiliated and shamed into obscurity, you think, okay, great, maybe people stop giving to those kinds of people. Up pops another one. There's always another one to take the place of the last guy that got shamed or disgraced. And same thing with cults. Same thing, I mean, the people that join some of these cults, it doesn't matter how much dirt and stuff you have on their leaders. They say, well, that was back then. We're something new now. Mm-hmm. And they never learned that maybe we were deceived all along. Now that their heart is hardened, and the enemies of Christ are always going to be with you, and they're always going to come back. And in the last few verses, verses 55 through 58, I want you to consider this. There's no right age for witnessing. Saul said, whose son is this? Mm-hmm. Who's this young man doing such great things? There's no right age for soul winning. The earlier the better, if you're able. And that's something every Christian parent should bear in mind. That
yes, sir. I
want my children to be mindful of their friends who are not saved, that they need to be saved.
Yes, sir.
And those people we meet on your street, if young kids are playing with other kids, they need to bear in mind that Jesus is watching, and Jesus wants you to be your very best for His sake, and to try and witness to your friends, a little girl, a little boy down the street, and their salvation is also very important to God. Right. So it's not something just for old people. It's not just something for preachers. Not just something for some elder or deacon in the church. Not just something for a guy who's been saved 65 years. Every